Okay, here we are. Don't sell our libraries. Don't sell our libraries. Don't sell our libraries. Don't sell our libraries. All right, so do you want to say anything to the camera?
Yeah, I am not for the idea of transferring public land to private hands. And I'm also not for the idea of creating luxury housing on top of our public library.
Fantastic. Would you like to say something?
Well, I would agree with him. I think that we need to really examine the ramifications of this in many ways. The library itself, which is probably the most important building in this neighborhood, as well as the potential height of like a really tall apartment building that's not really affordable for this neighborhood, I don't think is a good thing.
It's really unclear how tall this building is going to be because you have a lot of FAR that can be transferred, and it's a big lot with the running track in the back.
Sold, you know?
Look at this! I got to get this sign here. Fantastic.
About the library perhaps being closed for 2 to 3 years. This is a major informational hub for the people of our community. Historically, black and brown people have been denied access to information, which helps to keep them low-income families. We need our libraries open.
Well, you know that it wasn't 3 years with the Donnell.
It was longer.
Yeah, they said that it was going to be 3 years with the Donnell, and they announced closing at the end of 2007. It didn't open until this summer, and they still haven't replaced the teen center.
I am most concerned about the library for children and teenagers. Seriously concerned. I could live with housing as long as it's affordable housing over it. That doesn't bother me. But the loss of the library for the children in this neighborhood is very serious.
It was just renovated and expanded.
Yeah, and they received a grant recently, so they do have some money in their coffers.
Also, I want to know, is it the city selling or is it the library selling?
It's de Blasio and the library are both participating in this.
Because the library has...
The city owns the real estate, and the library is the tenant for the real estate.
I don't think the library should be fundraising in poor communities. I mean, basically this is what's happening if they sell the library.
Well, it's a question when the libraries fundraise and they say this is for libraries, but they're really using the money to turn the libraries into real estate deals which is not for the benefit of the library patrons. So then you need to think twice about giving your money to the libraries. And when they say we are fundraising to get more books and they're getting rid of books, you know, that's false advertising. If you can just explain once more.
Yeah, this is how the street scene would look under existing zoning, and this is how a redeveloped library would fit into the landscape under existing zoning.
All right. That's under existing zoning, but what they're actually doing is what?
They've shown a picture here of the library as they suggest a 17-story building might look, and here's the reality.
And there's a lot of FAR from these neighboring properties, and also from the running track in the back that can be transferred.
A single-story supermarket here. There's a single-story retail on Dykeman Street. There's a gas station over the road on Kitty Corner. There's this element of the school which also could be developed. And the entire block, there's plenty of space on that block for development.
And back here you have Inwood Park, and a hill goes up, and you've got the cloisters, right? So a really, really tall building would be looking in the windows of the cloisters.
I think the entire block could be developed fairly simply.
And you are?
My name's Barry.
How do you feel about the proposal?
I think it's a great idea to have affordable housing. I'm just not too sure I like the zoning aspect. I think in the long run it'll put pressure on rents in the city.
What do you feel about the idea that there'd have to be some kind of, there'd be all the disruption of getting rid of this, and then there'd have to be an interim library. And Donnell, do you know how long it took to replace Donnell?
I think it'd be difficult. I was told by someone from the library that it could cost up to $500,000 a year to replace this library. The interim costs would be about $500,000.
Well, Denell, they still haven't replaced the teen center. They're hoping to have the teen center replaced in 2020.
Other city.
Plenty of, yeah, there's other city land. There's other land parcels. Don't buy our.
I'm sorry, would you like to, are you recording?
Yeah.
Can I ask you not to record the conversation?
Why not?
Why? This is a public space. It's a United.
Do you not want to be on record about what you're saying to the
right,
people?
We're still in a free country. Last time I checked, this is a public conversation.
Public conversation, I'm glad to engage you.
The library does not allow photographing without permission.
The library does not
How
allow,
could that possibly be? What does that mean?
so it's library policy.
But based on.
Well, this is
based on
this is a
what?
public event. Now, are you closing the public event?
It's a public space and a public event.
We are not
That doesn't
closing a
make
public
sense.
space. I think the library doesn't allow pictures, whether there's an
Based
event or
on
not.
what?
You are holding a public event. This is so would you say at a public hearing you can't take pictures? I'm told that this is the equivalent of a public hearing. I think that's what the councilman's representative said.
Public hearing prior to the deal already being.
Well, this is the beginning of the engagement process. I'm here to speak with you guys if you want to ask
Well,
questions.
this is what. No, I don't want to ask questions. We already know what it's doing. We've already done it with many libraries. This has happened with many libraries throughout this entire city. The Brooklyn Library.
No, it's a public
the sell-off
event.
of public libraries.
It's not a normal. It's not. This is not.
Well, I
And we
understand.
don't need to be mollified and told that we're.
I'm not trying to mollify you. We're trying to.
You know,
Okay.
it's infuriating.
I'm happy to have a
So
conversation
is there
with
any
you.
way to
if you
stop
want.
this train, or is the train out of the station?
The train is not out of the station. We have not drafted.
Has the purchase been made?
Here we go.
Okay. Hi, I'm Tina. I live in Inwood. It's very important for me that the library remains public. Privatizing the library does not help the users of the library. I am certain it will not be cheaper or better. It's a public service. It should remain public. I'm very much against it being sold and privately managed.
Would you like to say something?
Sure. This is a trend that's actually going on all around the country. The selling of things that the public owns in common, selling it off to private interests who then try and make a profit and run it as they see fit. It's like the destruction. They want to sell off the national parks. They want to sell off everything that we, the people, own and give it to private people. It's terrible.
Thank you. Would you like to say anything about selling off the libraries?
I'd have to think about it more. I'm not really a performer.
Would you like to say
I think
something?
I said enough one Saturday.
Are you aware that that's happening?
So there was a question I just asked you, and you haven't answered the question.
So the answer is no. There has been no been any conversation 6 months ago. Wait.
How far in advance did you know?
I just need to be privatized. Why can this not
Yes.
can this not be publicly owned and publicly managed? We've seen a trend over the last 40 years that more and more public services are privatized, and it doesn't favor us. Okay? This is not a for-profit service. This is something we pay for over our taxes. It's for everybody. It's very important to me that it's public ownership and publicly managed.
Yes.
And then we can discuss all the details. One more point I have is with affordable housing, and which is a quality that we have in Inwood already to a large extent, is I would like not to see a ghetto. One kind of people, one kind of people. Let's mix it up. Let's all live together, and we all use the library. But it must remain public.
Yes.
Translation.
La señora dice que apoya la idea de la biblioteca, pero ¿por qué se está construyendo con un sitio y utilizando la biblioteca todos?
Tina would like to say something about the consent?
Yeah, and so we've heard your comments a lot, and we understand it from the perspective that all of you, including ourselves at HPD and the library, want to make sure that what we...
You stopped, you never answered the question right.
So the library will be owned by the library.
How about the rest of it?
Wow.
We've asked this 3 days in a row. You never have an answer to this question. You always say the library is going to be owned publicly, but the rest of the land is going to be given away to the developer. That's unacceptable. Why can you not answer that question? What is the ownership structure of this plan?
The lady has the floor here. The lady has the floor.
Okay, answer the question, please.
Are you not the MC?
This is a public meeting.
It is, and she has a question. Answer the question.
Right, we've been waiting for that answer to the public question for 3 times now. This is the 3rd time. Okay. But he's confusing the question. He's confusing the question when he says the public is going to own the library. They do this every time.
So the way that affordable housing in New York City gets built is through a request for proposal process, and that's why we're all here. It informs the way that we will engage a developer. We don't know the developer going into this process, and based on what we hear from people, we write a request for proposal on Sunset Park. The development community that builds affordable housing in New York is there's both for-profit and nonprofits, and frequently the nonprofit and for-profits will joint venture to build out the project. Part of the way that we finance this is through the land that the city owns, and we're able to then get affordability out of the project. We typically sell the land to the developer, and it is controlled in the public interest through a series of documents, deeds, the actual loan documents, and everything else they've committed to. If they are in violation of any of their agreements with us, the city, the public, that we have, then we, as the city, as the public, are able to step into that project and take it back if they're in violation. That has not been the record of our developers. They go through an immense and very long process. We do a lot of due diligence work. Have they done affordable housing? Have they built it? How well has it been managed? And when they respond to the RFP, we make sure that whatever their response is the stuff that we're hearing in these workshops. And that's the purpose of these workshops. There'll be a report that's done at the end of it that will get attached to the RFP, and we ask the developer specifically, how are you responding to the community goals and objectives and concerns? We know that one of them is around site control, land control. So we'll ask them, what is your mechanism for ensuring that the public interest is maintained? There's various ways that we can do that. Okay. There's various ways, but deed, there's ground lease structures. There's a variety of ways that we can use to actually ensure that the public interest is maintained in the land, so that whatever gets built on that land is maintained in public interest. Sorry.
And I appreciate that, but is there
the whole proposal will go through the land use process at the council. I personally am going to be very vigilant as a local council member. I have not had in front of me any detail yet from HPD or the administration or what is the type of agreement that they look to put in place. So just for you to know, like, we're going to be vigilant, but we don't have any detail. Let's hold that one and let's go to the next person.
Can I add a tiny little thing? Can we explore a public option like this stays hours? You understand what I'm saying? Can we explore that?
Yeah, that's what we say. You know, the community land trust is a possibility. This is something that the HPD.
Yes, and we put all those options in the RFP when we write it and say, here's community land trust or ground lease is the way that land can stay in the public.
Max, thank you. I represent my family that has lived at 210 Sherman, actually, and since my cousin and rest in peace her mom that passed away don't speak English. They've asked me actually to speak on their behalf. I know the area very well. Her daughter, her son, this is my cousin, so these are second cousins, have come to this library for many years, okay, and they also have lived at 210 Sherman actually before 1984, Councilman, and what they would like is for more affordable housing, okay, and this library to continue. So they agree with the project with the council member because they believe that's what's going to happen. As long as there's more affordable housing and this library is accessible. They agree with the project. Right?
They're tearing it down.
So, sorry, hold on, Max, hold it. Sir, there's another person after Max. So, en español, el señor.
So we need this library. I grew up in this library. My sister did. My mom did. My grandmother did. Taking it off is like taking our history part and putting it away for someplace else.
Thank you.
The plan is not to permanently close the library. I mean, we would not be a party to that, obviously. The plan is to enhance library service in this community, to build a brand new library, to build a state-of-the-art library, a modern library. That's what we're looking to do.
Yeah, like getting rid of
So
Sybil.
if anyone is out here thinking that we're permanently closing the library, that is a falsehood, and that is not what's happening. We're looking to improve library service to this community.
We're just worried about... Sorry, in Spanish. A la señora. Para todo.
Brewer's here to see
There's two things. One, we all want affordable housing that's affordable to the community, and we all want a library that's open as many hours as possible with as much technology and as much books. And we do want the city to be in charge of the land. So I don't think that's so hard. Try other places where we have market housing above, which I hate, and something on the bottom. So I'm just saying we all need to focus land trust. Prefer to have a nonprofit build it, personally. That would be my preference. Hopefully the RFP can make it so that no developer for-profit is interested. That would be my preference. Sorry, HPD. But those are things that we can do is we just make a list. And I have to give HPD and the library a lot of credit because they want to do it the right way. But those would be on my bucket list. Thank you for being here. Thank you, library, HPD, and my colleagues.
Thank you, Gale.
Okay, from my experience, now I'm recent, I've only lived here 3 years. Before I moved out of downtown Lower Manhattan, we sued the mayor, the last mayor, the then commissioner of HPD, the head of EDC, and others, as well as the developer they were handing over, they were helping to buy some land, because the mayor. They had a land, I forget the exact name, a land lease for a property that had been turned over by the city years before. There was a land lease that said basically it can only be used for health purposes, and the mayor changed that with the stroke of a pen, saying, oh, I can change that as part of my administrative authority. That was the basis of a lawsuit saying, no, that had to go to the city council, that had to go to ULURP, and so on. We got a good settlement. It never was tested in court. We got a good settlement. The point is, if whatever instrument is used to protect the public interest in the land must be done in a way that a future mayor cannot sign it away, but that it would have to go for any changes to the city council at the very least.
I'm a young student within the community. I'm here tonight because I'm very invested within our community and was very excited. I'm very excited about the conversation when it comes to revitalizing and being able to have input with this new library. As a young professional within the community, being able to invest in our children, in incubator spaces, in technology, in 3D printing, in being able to reimagine these spaces, I think this is really important conversation that we can have as input in our community. Our children have access to technology with their phones. We always see them on them. Why don't we take it a step further and give them the tools to really prepare them for this new technological age that we are coming in?
That can happen without selling the library.
The young lady.
Thank you. So I have a few concerns, and I do appreciate you guys making the time to be here to address this all. Sorry. My main concern is there's a lot of economic uncertainty right now. If you guys are to sell to a private developer and the economy crumbles, what's the timeline going to look like for the library being permanently installed in this neighborhood? What are your plans? So that's one question. What are your plans to ensure that we have a strong temporary fixture in this neighborhood for our children? And there's an empty lot right across the street. Why has that not yet been explored for affordable housing? Doing that independently of revitalizing and reestablishing this library and expanding this library, because I think we all agree that that's what we want. So Councilmember, I'd love to hear from you why you chose this exact project and how you plan to hold a private developer accountable to serving the needs of the community.
And before I answer, let me translate what you
Yeah.
La preocupación de ella, entonces, de nuevo, ¿por qué darle la tierra a alguien privado? And you know, in reference to that concern, I think that one thing that all of us agree, in this case, the elected official, Brewer and I, and many of you, have said, we need to explore the land trust as the first option para garantizar que el control de la tierra se mantenga en la ciudad. And as I say, we have not engaged myself or the elected official in conversation in HPD or the mayor when it comes to what is the agreement that there is in place. So we are listening to the community loud and clear when it comes to the importance of protecting the value of this land. Entonces ella da la primera preocupación es qué pasa con el futuro de la tierra, porque da solo en el privado. ¿Por qué no mirar otro lugar, como el lugar que está al cruzar? You know, I came here, as I said, 1984, and since 1993, for many years, I don't know if that site has been in the same condition there. It's a private owner. As far as I say, Martin Collin, and you did a lot of work with Council Member Jackson before. And they know that that particular lady, she said, over my body, I'm not getting rid of this piece of land. The land that we use, the piece of land close to the land that was built, used for the stack building, with only 20% affordable. That's the only one, but the empty one is a private. The city cannot take over that one. But you know, those are the challenges that we face in the city. In the previous administration, identified a couple of potential sites where we refer to the administration. But as I said before, I don't know if you were here when I said about Gale, when she served by the council together before becoming board president, she knows that I've been fighting it so hard. You know, 552 Academy, the building at the corner of Post Avenue Academy, tenants here, as we would never imagine, they were living without gas for 5 years. When the snowstorm came,
the community now for about 36 years. As Council Member Rodriguez mentioned, I did work for a city council member in the past who represented part of this community. And full disclosure, I currently work part-time for our newly elected state senator, Marisol Alcantara, and my focus is housing, preservation of our housing, keeping an eye on development, all of these issues. It's something that I have a substantial amount of experience with. I'm an attorney and I've done a lot of work in the area of housing for a very long time. I am not going to express an opinion about this project right now. Personally, I don't know at this moment if Marisol Alcantara has or what her opinion of this project is, and I will tell you why. Because my understanding was that the city, a couple agencies, public library, Robin Hood, etc., were going to bring the community together to talk about what we wanted this project to look like, okay? That is from bottom to top, including the structure of the deal, the kind of affordability we need, etc., and so forth. And I was thinking that I should just keep my mouth shut and make some phone calls tomorrow, but I'm gonna say this out loud. I am deeply disappointed to see this as a way of talking to the community and getting input from the community. Since I've arrived at this meeting, I've seen so many people leave saying this is BS, this is nonsense, nobody's listening. And when I hear people in this community asking questions, what are you gonna do about this? What are you gonna do about that? How are you gonna? That tells me that it has not been made clear to my many neighbors, and if they don't get it at this meeting, I'm sure they didn't get it at the other two, that we as a community have input, we have power, and that in fact, HPD, the New York Public Library, and the Robin Hood Foundation are going to be listening to what we want. So what I would recommend is that we need to do this again. And we need to have a place where people can sit down, where they can take their coats off, where they're not roasting, where there can be pencils and papers, and there can be clarity among the community that the leaders who are working on this project are actually listening to this community. That I'm now speaking not just as myself, but as a representative of the Senator's office. This is not what we were told would happen. There was a meeting that happened prior to these 3 charettes, and I raised this issue. I said, this has to be serious, it has to be clear, it has to be detailed, and my community, our community, has to know that people are listening. And I don't get that has happened. So I would make a recommendation to everybody who's listening that we need to start this again. And people need some documents, they need commitments, they need to be written down.
Susan, we got it.
And thank you.
So, Susan está expresando una de las preocupaciones de que ella no está hablando, ella trabaja para Marisol part-time, ella no está hablando por Marisol, ella lo que está expresando de que, one thing that I'm going to add to, and she's not speaking for Marisol, but she is telling how she feels the process, is that we addressed this concern last time when we were here. One thing that we say that there's going to be a large community meeting, and we're hoping for that meeting to take place in March, the later. And as you know, this is like a community scope where people are able to walk around and show what they would like to see happen here. Then the public library, HPD, they will have to take all the information, they have to put all the information and bring those information back to the community. Community board will have a role to play with this.
So you're saying there's going to be another meeting?
There will be, yes.
Before the RFP goes out?
Yes, miss, yes,
Okay,
but we
well,
said we said it on Saturday. We said
Does
it
anybody
Saturday.
know that already? Because
Yes, most people were here, they know it was announced.
announced on Saturday.
We said we would do it, we just haven't determined a date yet, but on Saturday.
And then people could sit at tables and do that.
Yeah. What?
Okay, thank you. Council retired city worker who's lived in this neighborhood my whole life. And the essential concern I have is the first line of why this is happening is to upgrade the library. But the library was upgraded within the past 10 years, probably as recently as 8 years ago. A new floor was put in 2 years ago. If you look at it, it's quite a nice, cheerful place with lots of children. And that's sort of my concern. I mean, I know what happened to Donnell. I know it's a very cute library, but there's no books in it. It's a very nice boutique library. So that's just sort of my concern. Also, next door where the car wash is, it was a gas station for 50 years. So who knows what's underneath it, is all I'm saying. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, so again, from the library's perspective, we know that libraries are being used differently. We know that this library, although it was renovated in 2001.
More recently.
Well, more recently there was some cosmetic work that we did.
Because the first thing didn't work, so it had to be done, so it was probably
The last major renovation was in 2001. But we did do some cosmetic work, as you mentioned, the floors. But we do know that the roof is leaking. We do know that we need a new boiler. We need a new HVAC system. We also know that the configuration of this library could be configured in a way that we can create even more public space within this library. And we also know that the basement here, really, I mean, Danita can speak to this, the library manager, you really can't use it for programs and community events. It's just not adequate space. So we envision a greatly improved library by this project. And we know that also libraries are being used more and more for programs, for educational programs, and there aren't really the dedicated classroom spaces in here that we would like to create and we would like to see. So, you know, we've been at this, the NYPL, since 1893. I mean, we're up to 93 libraries, and we wouldn't, for a minute, entertain this project unless we thought that it would greatly improve library service to the community. And yes, this is a great building, and yes, it's used quite robustly, as the numbers show. And we know that the folks in Inwood love their library, and we want to provide an even better experience for them. And we believe this project will do that. And that's part of the reason why we're doing this workshop, and we've done these workshops, is to get your input, as we've done with other projects, to hear from you what it is that you'd like this. There are 20,000 books. Not Donnell, the new 53rd Street Library is over 20,000 books, so.
Not on display.
Experience, having done many renovations, Then on the library front, I'm not gonna talk about the beloved HPD, but if we have ideas, how many books, how many terminals, open space, blah, 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 technology, E-rate into the community, etc. Free Wi-Fi, I'd love that in the neighborhood. You can do it. You gotta speak up. I do let you know. Janelle's a different story. Don't bring that one up.
What about civil?
I know, but bring up some other ones.
Yeah,
and I can tell you, it worked.
And we also.
And you're letting Sybil be sold and the science library totally eliminated and all of the science books eliminated.
We also know from our experience.
Well, that's an example of what the priorities are. You're letting Sybil be sold.
As Gale mentioned, I mean, we know from our experience, St. Agnes in her district, which she helped us do a complete renovation, that's in Old Carnegie, St. Agnes, the Highbridge Library, the Kingsbridge Library, these are libraries that we did complete renovations of. And those libraries invariably, the numbers of visits, circulation, program attendance just went up significantly once we opened the new library. Washington Heights as well.
I think if we could wave a magic wand over the building and poof, have what's been described to us appear, no one here would object. It's not uncommon for building projects to take a vastly longer period of time than originally projected. If you look at the bus terminal project that's been supposedly open, I don't know, for a long time, and it's still nowhere near finished. If you look at the Fort Tryon Jewish Center, where they cut a deal with the developer, they allowed them to use their air rights and to have access to Fort Washington Avenue, and the developer couldn't finish the project, and it sat there for I don't know how long, but 5-6 years, I'd say. And the Jewish Center has lost its space; it has nothing left. So we heard about some lofty ideas, and I don't know that anywhere in what we've seen here is any kind of a budget that shows where the money's going to come from for that. I think we need to see that kind of thing. Now, in terms of having another meeting where community input is provided, you can't just stack the deck by having the lowest building be 11 stories and have no option for either leaving the building intact the way it is and renovating it, or for something less than 11 stories. That's not there. Now, this option here, I don't know how many people got to read it, but you have a two-choice option, A and B. If you really look at it, there's almost an infinite number of combinations that are possible with what's offered here for you to check on. So to say that you're offering people an A or B choice is misleading, because it's not an A or B choice. There's all kinds of higher AMI amounts that would allow people with higher incomes to get housing in the building that's being proposed. So we need something much clearer than this that's obvious. I mean, I sat down and it took me about a half hour. Maybe I'm not a Rhodes Scholar, but I think the average person really has to work hard to figure out what's being offered here. It's very complicated.
Okay, lo que está explicando es que en realidad en el área.
Now my question is, does any way, if this ever happened, that you could build around the library rather than close the library? That way we can continue enjoying the facilities, as if this ever happened, of course. Can you build around it while we continue to enjoy our library?
Well, the proposal right now that we have is for yes to the project take place here in this site. As we say, no, we will continue. I personally believe I've been encouraging the administration also to look at all the area in this surrounding community that we have here. But right now, this proposal is focusing in this area.
En español, la pregunta era si podían construir.
So, yeah, I think that we all agree there's a housing crisis and we need affordable housing. I don't think anybody's going to argue with that. I also remember when this library was renovated and it was in a trailer for several years, so I understand that there's a commitment not to have it in a trailer on Broadway again. But I think that I appreciate the comments about the problems of the library, because I really have no understanding of the structural problems, although I do know that it doesn't cost as much to put on a new roof and fix a boiler. The whole library doesn't need to be knocked down for that reason. However, we're dealing with a lot of different issues here. And another issue that we need to kind of address is the privatization of public space in this city and probably in this country. So I think that for me, I understand all of these different issues, and I don't want anything to stop affordable housing from being built. But at the same time, in my lifetime in this city, I've watched the diminishing of public space, not just with housing, but with a lot of areas. You have private places in parks, you have all sorts of things, chunks of parks being lost. And you also have rent stabilization diminishing every year. So, which is another program. It's not, you know, it's part of our sustenance, and less rent stabilized housing. That program is disappearing over time. So I'm reacting to just like another example. I understand this might be the way HPD just works, because we had a short conversation beforehand. But I am happy to hear that there's a commitment to looking into land trust, which is another model. And I would like to see that be a real commitment, because this project doesn't have to happen in the same way as all the other HPD projects. It can be a new model. We can't have our public space continually going private. There can be a very strong lease and all sorts of situations, and then it's over in 25 years. And then what happens? It all needs to be renegotiated again, right? If it's privately owned fundamentally. And that's my concern, is that there's this tendency, and we need to have new models that don't contribute to that same tendency.
La señora está diciendo que la mayor preocupación,
including the area like northeast of 218 and Broadway. This area is largely parking lots. There are a few businesses there, but it's mostly parking lots. If we want to have, more conversations about building new affordable housing, I don't understand why we have just dropped this conversation totally off the map. The other point is that, if our objective is to preserve affordable housing, ProPublica had a very nice and insightful article in December talking about how, a series of unfortunate events in 1994 led to, the deregulation of so many rent-stabilized apartments. And that if we're looking to improve affordable housing, improve access to affordable housing, this is just like putting a Band-Aid on something while you're missing the big picture issue, which is, the systematic rent stabilization, income inequality between like the very, very rich and everybody else. And it's frustrating because a library is one of the very few community assets. And like you said, Council Member, we don't have many indoor spaces to congregate in this community in the wintertime. The library is one of those few places. And I don't understand why, it feels like we're committing, we're community members who love each other. Like, we want to live with the co-op owners and the people who are living in the rent-stabilized units and the people who are on the north side, south side of Inwood. We all want to be together. This is our cohesion in our community, and it is pitting us against each other in a very unfair way by saying that, it's the library or else. And I really strongly feel that we need to go back to that conversation we were having last year about taking parking lots and changing parking lots into affordable housing units, and parking lots into could be more library spaces, maybe an extra library that gets built as a satellite and eventually becomes a satellite branch up there, having parks, having lots of community things. And this conversation, we were promised an environmental impact survey of this back in September, but it never materialized, and the conversation has just stopped. So my question is, why are we having this conversation about the library right here, right now? Like, why don't we have a conversation about building like affordable units in an area of land? Like this footprint here is tiny. There's a lot of space, and why don't we investigate this space? You talked about that before, and I'd like to hear you talk about it some more.
One thing that I'm going to add, and then I'm going to translate, Tino can also respond to that question, is, in my case, I always say, have it in mind. I've been at the council for 8 years. I have not done a single rezone. The programming or whatever we do in Tenali. I'm not saying that they say yes, okay, but I'm saying that for me, it's all about just to have a library. I want to see.
Libraries are holy places, secular and sacred spaces. Everyone knows. They foster unity, community, friends, and opportunity. Everyone knows. But libraries now are no longer safe. Real estate moguls claim them and maim them, slice them and dice them, profits entice them. Crises like these take courage to face. They take unity, community, friends, and opportunity. Everyone knows.